Hi everybody, thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Introduction to Green Impact webinar. We've got people joining us from all over Australia today, so thank you for taking the time to participate. Before I get started, I just wanted to give you a few technical details for using the GoToWebinar software for those that may not have been familiar with it. By default, everybody's in mute mode and will remain so for the majority of the session, just so we don't get lots of interruptions and feedbacks happening. However, we do encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar, and Charlotte will give more detail on that. But I'll just briefly let you know there are two ways that you can interact easily. If you have microphone capability, then you're able to ask questions. You'll see in the control panel there's a small hand icon. When you click that, it effectively raises your hand like you're waiting to ask a question. So Charlotte will take pauses throughout the presentation and we'll be able to unmute those that have their hands raised, and you can ask your question then. Alternatively, if you don't have microphone capability or would prefer not to speak, then you can just type your question into the question bar there. I'll be monitoring these throughout the webinar and I'll put them through to Charlotte whenever there's a break in the presentation. Finally, on just the technical front, we are recording this session and are hoping to make it available online after the fact. So just be aware that we are recording it and let us know if you have any issues with that. So now I'll pass the reins over to Charlotte Bonner, who will be taking today's presentation. Charlotte is the Communities Program Manager at the National Union of Students in the UK and joins us bright and early from her side of the world. I think it's about 5 a.m. over there. So a big thank you to Charlotte for getting up nice and early to talk to us about green impact.
No problem at all. It's not bright, it's still dark over here, but it feels very early, but it's really nice to be here. So thank you very much, Rhiannon. Thank you. So just a couple of things, Rhiannon covered most of them before we get going. Let's see if I can get this to work. So I can only see that we have attendees. I don't know who's here. So Rhiannon mentioned the chat function of the GoToWebinar software. It'd be really nice to just say hello, so I can find out who people are and which university or college they're from. That just gives me a better idea of who we've got kind of in the room, as it were, which would be great. It'll also get you used to the software if you haven't used it before. We find it quite useful because the internet connection on the GoToWebinar function is quite demanding, so if you can close any other computer programs down that you're not using at the same time, that'd be really helpful. And you've been muted, so it doesn't matter if you have your phone on or not. I think it's really helpful at the beginning of the session to just have a think about what you want to get out of the next hour. If there's any specific questions that you have, any specific behaviour change or staff and student engagement challenges that you're facing at the moment that you'd like to discuss, any particular nuances about the programme that you'd like to go into more detail with, have a think about what you want to get out of the next hour, so by the end of the session we can make sure we've covered everybody's objectives. That's always helpful. And then the other thing is basically about participating. I know it's quite often easy when you're on the receiving end of a webinar to kind of fade in and fade out, but if you have any questions, if there's any discussions that you want to have, any experiences that you've had that you think will be a useful contribution to what we're talking about, then please do let us know using that hand up icon. Otherwise it's me sat in a room in the UK by myself talking, which is a slightly odd way of starting your day. And then finally, please do ask questions. There's absolutely no such thing as a silly question. So if you've got anything at all that you want clarification with, if it's just my accent that you need something repeating, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. And as Rhiannon says, you can do that throughout the presentation, or there's a section at the end as well. So I'm more than happy at any point to answer any questions that you have. So as Rhiannon says, I'm the Communities Programme Manager at NUS, the National Union of Students. I've worked here for 5 years. My first role at NUS was to establish the Green Impact Programme, so I've been involved for more or less since its inception as the programme that it is today. I now work with a lot of off-campus organisations, so less with universities and colleges, and more with off-campus organisations like hospitals, fire stations, museums, charities, who also want to run the Green Impact Programme, adding capacity to their organisations through student volunteering programmes. I'm also responsibility for the internationalism agenda, which is one of the reasons why I'm here talking to you today. Rhiannon, does everyone know who you are? Would you like to give a brief introduction?
I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with me and ACTS. Like I'm the administration and communication manager for the association, so I think by default most people have heard from me in one impact or another.
Okay, excellent. I didn't want you to feel left out.
Thank you.
So, just a little bit about what the session looks like. So I thought I'd give you an introduction to Green Impact. What does the model actually look like? How does the programme work? Then I'll move on to what we're proposing in terms of the ACTS programme and the partnership that we're proposing with them. Talk about the next steps and where to go for assistance and further information. It's a fairly self-contained subject today. The background between how we got here, I just thought would be useful to know. So we're currently around the introduction webinars, about midway through this this kind of methodology, as it were. So for the past number of years, there's been increasing international discussion and contact between sector bodies, between membership organisations like ACTS and the UK equivalent, the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges, the EAUC, the American equivalent, ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, and organisations such as ourselves who are doing a lot of work in sustainability in education sector to really share good practice, help overcome shared challenges, and to share programmes such as the Green Gown Awards, for example. Last year, my colleague, who was conveniently also called Charlotte Taylor, attended the ACTS conference to give a keynote on how students have been really part of the sustainability shift in the higher education sector and the further education sector here in the UK. Off the back of that conference, there's been a number of conversations, a number of explorations with specific institutions, with ACTS, with other organisations such as TAG, all of whom seem to be interested in the Green Impact model. So the ACTS board have had a number of discussions about this and agree that it has potential for its members. So we're now at the stage where we are running introduction webinars and requesting expressions of interest to see how many people would be interested in running a programme in partnership with ACTS and ourselves. The plan then is to develop a final offer based on people's feedback and based on the way that the programme's been run in other countries. We'll run a fringe session at the ACTS conference later this year before a formal launch, hopefully in January 2015. So that's kind of a bit of background as to how we got where we are today. So what is Green Impact? I think the first thing that's really important to stress is that it's an internal accreditations and award scheme. So it's not a way of comparing different universities and colleges against one another. It's very much a programme that different institutions run in-house for their students and staff. And it's an accreditation and award scheme that departments and teams of people throughout the organisation can get involved with. We've been running it for a number of years, officially since 2009. That's the first time we rolled it out to multiple organisations, and we've done an awful lot of research and evaluation of the programme since then. And it is now a proven way of increasing pro-environmental attitudes and behaviours of people within an organisation. So it's a way of getting more people on board with the sustainability agenda and acting upon their newfound attitudes. It's a communication engagement tool for staff. It's a great way of sharing information about initiatives that already exist, getting real dialogue from your staff around sustainability issues. It's a framework which helps people understand how they can make pro-environmental change. So we really break the vast sustainability agenda down into easy to manage pieces for people to work on. So it's a really easy framework to fit around a normal working life. It just helps people break it down so that they can see exactly how sustainability impacts their day-to-day life at work. It's an opportunity for students and staff to gain new skills. There's multiple training opportunities throughout the programme, as well as volunteering opportunities as well. And now, as I said earlier on, it's been adapted and tailored for different sectors. Students' unions, which is where it started back in 2006, universities and colleges, which launched in 2009, local government, hospitals, SMEs, the police force, all sorts of different organisations are now using the programme. And I think what this shows is that it's really flexible. although we know that the model works, the way that we adapt and tailor it for different organisations and different sectors varies. So we can work to different working cultures, different communication styles, different timescales, and different priorities as well. And this is just a chart to show you how the programme has developed since it launched officially back in 2007 with the Students' Unions programme, and then in 2009 when we opened it up to universities and colleges as well. So as you can see, it really is a growing programme, and here in the UK it's now quite prolific, and we have had one international university take part the last year. That was McEwan University in Canada, in Edmonton, and this year it's looking likely that each of those will increase yet again. We're talking to both ACT and ASHE about developing programmes based on this model for their members, so I particularly see that last column increasing in the next year. Apologies if the acronyms we use are slightly different. FHEIs, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's just further and higher education institutions. That's just an acronym we use, but I'm very, very aware that acronyms aren't necessarily transport words. Okay, what I'm going to do now is talk you through the Green Impact Model in a bit more detail. How does it work for a university who's signed up to the programme? What does it entail for them? What the process is. So the very first thing we do is develop an online toolkit. So this is basically, in all honesty, this is a big long list of all the different things that normal staff members, whether they're professional staff or faculty staff, academics, can get involved in, can do something with, that are relevant to their job. So it's not about changing the insulation on the buildings or refitting the boilers. This is very much about day-to-day engagement with sustainability. So it may be that we're encouraging academics to use electronic submission rather than paper-based submission for their courses. It may be that we're asking people to monitor where sustainability currently fits within their curriculum. It may be that we're asking people to double-side print or to communicate about the various sustainable transport initiatives that the university has. It really is very broad, and it crosses the whole boundary of sustainability, whether that's environmental sustainability or economic or social benefits. All of the things that you're working on within your institution can be broken down into criteria within this online toolkit. We then break the list down into bronze, silver, and bonus criteria. They're the standard 3, and it just basically means that people they know where to start. People start with the bronze ones. So you can put within that category maybe 15 to 25 criteria that you think, okay, these are the real basics. This is what we definitely want absolutely everybody to be doing. And as you get more complex, as you go into the silver, then the bonus criteria, the criteria can become more complex as well. So it might be that the initial ones are kind of very simple to-dos. By the time you get through to the bonus, more complex strategic to-dos, monitoring and evaluation, that kind of thing. We can also build parts of the toolkit that are relevant to specific areas of the organisation that have specific environmental impacts. So, for example, laboratories. Obviously, if we were talking about fume cupboards and hazardous waste disposal, that wouldn't be relevant to an awful lot of people within an institution, but that's not to say it's not really important in terms of the impact. So we can build specialist areas as necessary. There's also a special area of the online toolkit, and this is a bit like a normal awards application. So this is kind of the anything else bit, where people can nominate their environmental hero, or a project or initiative they've been working on that they think deserves a bit of extra recognition. So we developed one of these workbooks with absolutely every organisation. It's bespoke to each one. So if we have 10 universities in Australasia taking part, there would be 10 separate toolkits, each one of them bespoke to each institution. So we can tailor it to existing initiatives that exist, your own objectives, exactly where you're at the moment. Then it gets uploaded onto a simple online tool. It's very intuitive to use, very easy to use. Does anybody have any questions about the toolkit?
One
There's
question.
a little bit of tension at this moment where I don't know.
Sorry, Charlotte. We've got a question from Seb, so I'm just going to unmute him.
Cool.
Seb, you're now unmuted.
Hi, Seb.
Not sure if he can. We can't hear you at the moment, Seb. Okay, Seb, if you can hear us, we've got you unmuted right now. Oh, hang on, we've just typed a question. Can we change the names of the tags, or are we stuck with yours?
No, you're not stuck with ours. You can completely change this. So this is just one university's toolkit. People use all sorts of different ones. We have about 50 already in the system, but we can easily add more. There's unlimited possibilities.
And we have another question from Peter, which is cost ?
Yeah, so we've got a discussion about that a little later on in the show, because obviously that's going to be the big question for most people. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to defer that one because, like I say, I've got some slides prepared. Is that okay, Rhiannon?
I think that should be fine. And Seb said thank you.
No problem at all. Okay, fine. So once we have the toolkit, we then encourage people across the organisation to form teams. And this is really important. It's a team participation programme, not an individual participation programme. So this is the geography department from one of the universities that takes part here in the UK. And you'll see there's a real mix there of both staff and students. So what makes up a team is completely up to the team members itself. Sometimes it can be geography, so it could be, you know, the people based in this building are a team. Sometimes it can be a organisational department, so it could be the finance team are taking part, the chemistry department are taking part, the president's office is taking part, for example. Sometimes it's based around a corridor, so there might be multiple departments off that corridor, but they want to take part as a unit. We really don't think it matters with regards to the impact of the programme, but people need to feel comfortable with the scope that they have set for themselves. We also recruit and train students at this point to be project assistants or green impact consultants, which are synonymous. But this is where we train students in communication skills, leadership skills, professional skills, sustainability skills, and buddy them up with teams to add capacity and bring a real vibrancy to the green impact programme. So we have teams of staff taking part across an organisation, and how many teams you get depends on the size of your organisation and the recruitment mechanisms you use, but we have a lot of tricks up our sleeves to make sure that recruitment levels are adequate and there's enough people taking part in the programme. There's a black slide. The next thing we do is we give people, the teams that we've recruited, the access to the online toolkit, and they start working through the changes that we've suggested. So that could be in any way that suits them. We make sure there's a real flexibility with how people implement the criteria we're suggesting, and we don't want to be dogmatic about how they do that. But we do provide them with absolutely bucket loads of resources and support. So whether that's templates, whether that's case studies, whether that's linking them to existing resources that exist elsewhere, it's a really good way to kind of bring out all your sustainability initiatives under one umbrella, signposting people to the different things that you already have available, both internally and externally to your organisation as well. So for example, we point people towards the Fair Trade Foundation to get resources to help them raise awareness of the Fair Trade Initiative. Or it could be that if we're suggesting that people have an induction checklist for their local area, we've already provided them with a template so that they can get going on that without reinventing the wheel. So there's absolutely bucket loads of resources. We quite often run webinars and events and workshops as well, bringing people together so they can see that there's real efficacy in their actions. It's not just one person battling away to try and make their department more sustainable, but actually they're part of a really growing number of organisations all working on similar themes. We then set a timescale. So this is normally at least 6 months, sometimes a little more, but generally it works within an academic year. But after which we say, okay, can you tell us what you've achieved during that time? So most people will aim for an award during that time. They'll either aim for a bronze if they're starting from scratch, or a silver if they're feeling ambitious, or maybe even a gold award if they're really competitive. So by the end of the kind of the cycle, the submission date, we get a record of where everybody's at and what they've done. The next thing we do is we recruit more students to act as auditors. Now, personally, I have qualms with the word auditors. I think it sounds like a scary experience. But basically what we're asking students to do is to go meet with teams who have taken part in the programme, verify the results that they've suggested that they've achieved, but also to collect examples of good practice and also identify areas where further support or resources may be needed. So it's a really good way of getting kind of eyes and ears across the different teams that you have to really get a good picture of both what your teams are doing, what they're struggling with, what they're doing well, and what further needs to be done. All of our training is approved by IEMA, which is the Institute for Environmental Managers and Assessors. So after the auditing process, we have a really good idea of who's done what. So what we then do is we host an award ceremony or event to celebrate those successes, to bring people together, to give them some recognition for the time and input that they've made, to celebrate the students' successes as well, and to generally just have a nice time. This is the University of Westminster's, where they received pot plants, varying sizes depending on whether they achieved bronze, silver or gold awards. This is the University College London, where they received recycled slate awards. So it really doesn't matter what you give people, I don't think, as long as it's a really positive celebratory feel to wrap up the year's programme. This is a really nice time to have guest speakers or to run practical workshops or do something kind of fun and engaging with your teams. At McEwan University in Canada, they had their award ceremony in May, and they ended up making sustainable detergents with the people that attended. So they just had loads of different kind of soaps and essential oils, and everyone left with a little bottle of their own sustainable detergent. So it really doesn't matter what you do, as long as people are having a nice time for an hour out of their normal day. It's not quite the end of the process, though. After the award ceremony, we go through a feedback process. So each team will receive about a 3-page impact report that shows them how they fared, how they did with in comparison to others from their university, what areas they did really well in, which areas that they should focus on next, and also some qualitative feedback based on what their auditors said about their experience as well. So there's really a closed loop there. The institution, the organisation, will also get a full impact report that sums up the actions that have been made across their teams, both in terms of the actions from the workbook, but also the anecdotal evidence and the monitoring and evaluation that we've done in terms of attitudes and behaviours as well. So you can really see a shift, hopefully, a positive shift in how your staff and students engage with sustainability. At the same time, we ask for feedback from those who've participated to make sure that the programme is continuing to being ran at a high quality level. And it's designed to be a cycle. I think most people who work in the sustainability sector realise that behaviour change and full engagement with the sustainability agenda doesn't happen overnight. What we've found is that institutions who take part for a couple of years really get widespread understanding of what the programme's about, how to get involved with sustainability, how it impacts upon people's day-to-day jobs. Once people have been taking part for a year or two in the programme, they start to think beyond the preset criteria that we've suggested and actually start to think, okay, so how does sustainability affect my day-to-day decisions? What could I be doing to improve the positive impact of the institution? And that, I think, is where the real value of the programme comes from. Not from people filling in kind of each year telling us what they're doing that we've suggested, but actually when they start thinking consciously, how can I embed sustainability with what I do on a day-to-day basis? So it is designed to be cyclical. We're also quite sneaky, so each year we make every level a little bit harder. So even if a team retains the same award level from year to year, they're still continually improving. So that's the full project cycle that we run on pretty much an annual basis. So it works to a year in terms of timescales. So again, does anybody have any questions about how the project actually works?
We do have a question that's come in from Gretel at Charles Sturt University. and she's wondering how Green Impact fits in with the Life Index, which is the Learning in Future Environments tool that both the EAUC and ACTS have available for our members.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that you can do to help implement sustainability changes that will then improve your life rating. And we can structure the program. If life is something that you as an institution have signed up to, we can quite easily structure the program in terms of what we're asking people to do around the different sections of life. So it could be just as simply as we look at the criteria and we base them on the life framework, so that you've got a really practical tool to engage everybody within your institution in the Life Index, which will obviously help your score in the long run. So I think Green Impact is an implementation tool to help you do more through your Life Index, if that makes sense. And it's the same with ISO 14001, other environmental systems. What Green Impact does is provide you with an implementation tool, a communication tool, an engagement tool to get people across your organisation doing the things you need them to do in order to gain those accreditations.
I think the key point in that one is that Green Impact is not in competition in any way with the Life Index, that the two can work happily together.
No. I mean, we work very closely with Jimmy Brannigan, who actually designed the Life tool. He quite often helps us run workshops and provides a critique of our programs on a fairly regular basis. So, no, we're not in competition with Jimmy. I wouldn't want to be in that position.
So hopefully, Gretel, that answers your question. I think we've got some trouble with people seeing the chat bar functionality. I'm not too sure what's happening there, so I do apologise if you're not able to access the chat. But please do type through your questions, and I'll put them through on your behalf. So at the moment, we've got nobody with their hands up, and I think we've answered all of the current questions.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Shannon. So I'm aware that this won't work through the webinar, but what I have here is two links which I'll share with you. I'll send the slides around via Rhiannon after the webinar, and as Rhiannon said, we're also recording this. So there's just two short videos. Both of them are under 5 minutes, and one of them has been made by the University of Cambridge, one of them has been made by us, and it just shows a number of different universities, both in terms of their sustainability practitioners, but also their senior managers, their students, and the teams that have been involved in the Green Impact Programme, talking about the kind of impacts it's had. So although it won't work using the webinar software, I recommend that you have a look at those afterwards, especially the University of Cambridge one, because then you'll get it from an organisation's perspective rather than from our perspective as NUS. And likewise, if you'd like to talk to somebody that's been involved in the programme, we can quite easily hook you up with an organisation, maybe one that's similar to yourselves over here. We've got a lot of people that are happy to talk about their experiences. So why do I think it works? I think it works because it's tried and tested. We've adapted it over a number of years, and we know that the structure in terms of the process that I've just outlined works. But at the same time, it's very flexible in how it can be adapted to suit different organisations, so it's really unique to them, useful to them. It covers the whole sustainability agenda, so depending on what you're focusing on at the moment, you can really put that focus within your Green Impact workbook as well. So whether that's kind of basic carbon environmental behaviours, whether that's through to education for sustainable development, or whether that's more social issues such as fair trade, human rights, well-being at work, for example, we can embed those within the programme. The fact that it's a bottom-up approach, kind of really empowering people across the organisation to take action, really helps encourage them to change their own working practices, but also gets them engaged in a dialogue around sustainability. We do suggest to them through the toolkit what to do, but like I said earlier on, we're very flexible and lenient in how we see them do that. It's not a dogmatic program at all, so there's real power there in terms of how people can interpret the criteria and make them fit their workplace. One of the things that sustainability managers in the UK have found very useful is that it is an off-the-shelf action plan. It's a program that exists, the resources are there, the software's there. It's provided them with an easy framework to adapt their behaviour change needs to. It's very, very much positive. It incentivises it incentivises, shares and celebrates individual achievements and collective achievements too. We very rarely talk about climate change. We very rarely talk about the big problems surrounding sustainability, instead focusing on the practical outcomes, the fact that there's so many people working on this agenda through the programme to really continue to motivate people. And it also provides measurable outcomes and impacts, both through the actions within the workbook, but also through ongoing monitoring and evaluation that we build in through surveys, both at the beginning and the end of the programme each year, focus groups, that kind of thing. So you can really see the impact of what your programme's had. It's based on models of behaviour change. We try and stay really up to date with different behaviour change theory. But one that we continue to go back to is called a framework for pro-environmental behaviours. And these 4 E's, I don't know whether you're familiar with these, but they're quite often shown in a kite shape with each of the E's at each point of the kite. But it encourages staff to take action through positive communications, through workshops, through face-to-face and peer-to-peer engagement. It enables staff to create change by giving them very simple and easy to follow tasks. One of the key pieces of feedback we get year on year is that people really appreciate the fact that they've been given permission to act on sustainability in their workplace. Before, they saw it as something that's somebody else's job, whereas this makes it very obvious that people can engage with this agenda. It engages staff through the positive approach that we take, through competition, through awards, through the fact that you're providing valuable experiences for students. Quite often we find academic and faculty departments giving their students incentives to get involved in the programme through their curriculum, through their academic course. So it's a really engaging process. And it also exemplifies what can be achieved via peer-to-peer support, via the case studies, via the sharing of good practice, both throughout and at the end of each year's programme. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of things that students from this year have said about the programme. We've trained some, I think, 1,500 students this year to either take part as project assistants or as auditors. And especially, I mean, I don't do much training with project assistants myself, but I do a lot of auditor training. And it's funny, when you first get a group of students in a room and you start talking about auditing, some of them are familiar with the term, some of them aren't, some of them have very set preconceptions about what auditing is. And you can see their eyes as they kind of learn more about sustainability in their institution. They start thinking about what they've witnessed within their department. They go out and conduct these audits and they come back absolutely buzzing. They've just learned so much, which is a really rewarding part of the role, I must say. But a lot of students get involved at the moment for employability skills. So they're wanting to have things on their CV that show that they have good interpersonal skills, good diagnostic skills, good personal skills, good leadership skills. And through the opportunities we provide through Green Impact, they're able to do that as well as develop them over the course of the year. We're also introducing more and more people to the sustainability agenda, which is of course a good thing. I've got some staff testimonies here as well, which I'm not going to go through, but what I wanted to show is that different people get different things out of the programme. Some people are sustainability champions who have been sustainability champions for a very long time and all of a sudden feel that they have the permission and the kind of the central backing to really affect change locally. Some people see greater pride in the organisation they work for as a result of taking part in Green Impact because they can see people doing a really positive thing. We quite often find that people are reporting that the programme has helped improve communication between their team members, but also with other faculties and departments as well, helping break down silos. So there's all sorts of different positive benefits. People say, oh, you know, I learned this at work and now I do it at home. There's a lot of social and personal benefits that we see reported each year. So it's not just about the carbon savings and the kind of the day-to-day impact that the programme has. It is actually doing that hearts and minds piece as well. So that's kind of an overview of where the programme is at the moment. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what we're proposing with ACTS now in terms of working with organisations such as yourselves. So before I do that, Rhiannon, are there any more questions? Are there any more hands up? I don't want people to get sore arms waiting.
No, not at the moment. I think everybody's quite happy. Oh, hang on.
Okay.
No, there is one. Sorry. Um,
No.
Is there any differentiation within the program between staff and students, i.e., different activities and initiatives for two different groups, or are they things they work on together? And that comes from Seb at UTS.
Okay, so this is one of those areas that is actually quite different depending on the institution that's taken part in the program. So if we're recruiting students as project assistants and as auditors, they have very specific and defined roles, which are very much for students and students alone, whereas the staff tend to work on the program using the toolkit that we've developed. In other institutions, there are areas of the workbook specifically for students that say, okay, these are the student criteria that we're asking people to do. And in other places, it's very much this is for both. So we expect our staff and students to be working together and implementing these things collectively. And I think whenever a staff team gets student representation to help implement the program, there are certain things that is more appropriate for a staff member to do, and there are other things that students are really good at and will do in a much more dynamic, fresh way than a staff member potentially would. So I think in most cases people find their own kind of middle ground between the two. There's no one set way of doing it. And if there's already student initiatives, so for example, leadership programs or co-curricular or extracurricular award programs, we're very happy to work with those existing structures to make sure students can get recognition for their work through the program.
I think that's...
Hopefully that answers your question, Seb. Okay, cool. I mean, one of the things that we do with the project assistants, for example, is we draft a suggested role description, and then the first time that students meet their team, they go through that role description and make sure that both sides of the partnership are really happy with that role description. So it might be that the student's looking for specific skills to develop, and that's why they're taking part in the program. So they might want to shift the focus somewhat, or it might be that the staff team have a very clear idea of exactly what role they'd like the students to play. So we can make sure that both sides of the partnership are really happy with what they're doing. I mean, it's also worth pointing out that we do a lot of work separate to Green Impact on student engagement with sustainability. We run a number of different campaigns and programs specifically aimed at the student market, which are a bit more light touch. I think Green Impact, because it is a partnership between staff and students, is a very comprehensive program. It goes into a lot more depth than some of our other student programs.
And Seb says yes, thanks. So I think you've answered his question.
That's nice. Otherwise, I'd just keep on talking. Sounds good. Okay, so what we're providing, or suggesting that we provide with ACTS in terms of Green Impact in future, is providing these off-the-shelf behaviour change models, one of which is Green Impact, which I think at the moment is what we're talking about. And from ACTS's point of view, and Rhiannon, feel free to chip in at any point here, it's about developing a self-funded, not-for-profit support mechanism which supports ACT members to enable them to run the programme. And the fact that it's being done collectively has great benefits in terms of knowledge transfer, so improving the programme, helping overcome challenges, utilising existing resources, for example, as well as economies of scale. I think if everybody, if all the universities in the world started developing their own programmes, which some of them do, there are self-created versions of Green Impact all over the place. I just think that there's economies of scale in terms of the software, in terms of the resources, in terms of the providing support for different people within an organisation. I think you benefit from that. I think there's a big piece around empowering Australasian students through sustainability as well, making sure that students really are at the heart of the sustainability improvements that higher education and further education sectors are making. And I know that student engagement is something that a number of ACTS members have struggled with historically. It's also about building, supporting and strengthening university communities of academic professional staff and students. So we find both across the sector but also within a university, Green Impact really helps pull people together. You find all sorts of people coming out of the woodwork you didn't know were engaged with the sustainability agenda or working on it or willing to provide opportunities for new programs or new initiatives or support for what you do. So it really is about building communities. And the other thing is about providing capacity to act, so helping them drive pro-sustainability change across the Australasian tertiary education sector. So what we're suggesting and what we're hoping at this stage is that we get a number of institutions who are willing to commit to taking part in the programme launching in January 2015. As Peter has very astutely pointed out, there is a cost attached to the programme in terms of the support that is there for institutions to enable them to run it, and we're hoping that that fee will go to ACTS to help them support the programme across Australasia. And the kind of roles that they'd be taking is supporting, guiding and leading the Green Impact implementation at every stage, including training and resources. And depending on the number of institutions that we would recruit, there would be a staff member to do that, which would be quite a first for ACTS as their first staff member, which is how the kind of, going back to the last point in terms of providing capacity to drive pro-sustainability change, I think that's a very powerful piece. They'd also steer or administer the steering group to make sure that the programme was relevant and useful to its members. We're not in any way under any illusions that what works over here will definitely work for you guys. We've tried and tested the model in different environments. We think it will work, but obviously there will be things that need to be adapted to make sure they really do best for Australasian institutions. And ACTS will also do some work on the production of necessary communications and tools to support those taking part. We'll do the initial handover of the programme to make sure that those supporting you are really, really au fait with the programme and every bit of its subtle nuances. And we'll also provide advice and guidance, and again, necessarily communication tools to support that staff member at ACTS. And then from your point of view, from each of the organisations, we'll hopefully ensure that you guys input the bespoke planning and the workbook development stages for your organisation. And then locally, you will be doing the recruitment support, sometimes the training, sometimes that might be done by ACTS or NUS, the communications for your teams and students. So basically, ACTS nor NUS would directly engage with your teams and students, but we would provide you with all the tools and facilitation to enable you to do that best. And also to run the award ceremony. That's something, again, that needs to be done locally. I don't think, especially given the size of the continent, that's something that we could do centrally, unfortunately. So that's what we're proposing in terms of roles and responsibilities. The big question, how much is it going to cost? And I'm going to give you a really frustrating answer. And at this stage, we don't know, because it is all about the number of organisations that we have on board. The more organisations we have, the less it's going to cost. And we've got various different budget scenarios. And at the moment, that's why we're going through an expression of interest phase rather than a sign-up phase. It's because we want to know roughly how many organisations would be interested in taking part. There's no commitment at this stage. So we know the kind of figures we're talking about so we can develop a more accurate budget. So at this stage, it's really difficult for us to be able to give you a pinpoint, this is exactly what we're talking about, but we would like to know whether or not institutions are interested so that we can develop something that is realistic. And I think that's really important because it has to be realistic, it has to be value for money, and it has to self-fund itself. That's one of the key things to the sustainability of the whole programme. So at this stage, what we're asking, Rhiannon's developed a very short online expression of interest, where we've already started to receive some of those expressions from organisations. So we want to know who's interested, are there any particular things that they want us to focus on, so that we can then go away and develop a really precise package in terms of what the offer is, what the roles and responsibilities are, and how much it's going to cost. We're not going to be shying away from that one. So as I say, the next steps, if you are interested, fantastic. Please do register your interest using the expression of interest form. And at any stage, either through that expression of interest or now, or through communications with us after the webinar, please do provide feedback on the proposed methodology and the program. If there's elements that you think really won't work for you, then we really need to know that. Similarly, if there's things that you think this is definitely what we need, then we'd like to know that too. If there's things that you think we haven't considered, then again, let us know. I mean, I think we've been fairly comprehensive, both in our discussions with ACTS and obviously the last 5 years of running the programme, in terms of getting to understand what people want from it, but that might be completely different at your organisation. So we'd really want a good level of feedback at this stage, so that what we offer is fit for purpose. There's going to be a fringe session at the ACTS 2014 conference, which will bring people together who have expressed interest in running the programme, give you an update as to where we are and the next steps. So that's really a watch this space in terms of coming the next pieces of information around the programme that we're going to be developing. But that's where we're at the moment. So I hope that that's been a comprehensive introduction to what the programme entails, what the benefits are, and what we're proposing alongside ACTS. Obviously, if anybody has any more questions, now is a great time, because we're coming in a little under the hour that we had scheduled. And if not, we can. The next slide has our contact details on. So if you want to have a one-to-one discussion about the programme and how it could work for your organisation, then I'm more than happy to schedule those in.
We do have some questions.
Fantastic.
So we have a question from Alison, which is, in terms of staff resourcing by the institutions, in brackets from their Enviro offices, as a guide, what sort of commitment would enable successful implementation of the program?
So we monitor this very carefully, and normally it comes down to about an hour, between an hour and 3 hours a week, to really administer the program well. Some cases a little less, some cases a little more, depending on the size of the institution, the number of staff and students that you have, the geographic scale of your organisation. It does vary. But the main thing that we ask environment officers or sustainability managers to be doing is to be keeping in regular contact with their teams, because it's all about communication at the end of the day.
We've also got Sue, who suggested, so Sue's also with ACTS and came to ACTS from her position in the EAUC beforehand, so she's quite familiar with the Green Impact Program, and suggested you could give an overview of what institutions in the UK pay for the program, to give an idea. Yeah. Obviously, it's not going to be the same for in Australia because it's a different system, but just as an approximation.
Yep. So at the moment, I think there's an online rate card. The very, very biggest institutions who are brand new to the program are paying, off the top of my head, about £5,500. I don't know how that converts to Australian dollars. I'm really sorry, but I've got a tool in front of me, so I'll start tapping into that. And then the smaller institutions and organisations, again, who are new or have been taking part for a couple of years, that reduces right down to under £2,000 a year. So it really does vary on the size. But I think, like I said, it doesn't necessarily equate across the globe, but that's the level that we're talking about over here. I'm just quickly getting my currency converter out to make sure that that's actually meaningful to people. So give me a second. I'm really sorry, there's a delay on the questions coming through to me, so I haven't seen them, but I'm quite happy for you to continue to channel them, Rhiannon, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. I have the next one when you're ready. We've got a couple that have been sent through, which is great.
Okay, so one of the figures there was about $2,700. There you go, for a really small institution, going up using, like I say, the British costing, which isn't necessarily accurate, all the way up to about 9,000. So it varies quite significantly depending on the number or the size of the organisation, the level of support they require, basically.
Okay, so we've got another question from Seb. If the program is run on an annual basis, does a class move on each successive year from year 1 to year 2, etc.? And as the years go on, we're running programs at multiple levels?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but I'll go for my interpretation and see if that see if that answers your question, Seb. So if I was a chemistry department, for example, and I took part in year 1 and I got a bronze award, I would then hopefully be encouraged next year to take part and go for a silver award, and the next year after that to go for a gold award, for example. So I'm continually improving. I can see that I'm improving. I'm continuing to engage in the program. It could be that I'm a different department. Maybe I'm the catering services department, and I've got involved in the first year, and actually I'm really competitive. I'm a competitive kind of person. We're a competitive kind of team, and actually we decide we're going to do as much as we physically can in the first year. We're going to go for gold. So we do as much as we can from day 1. Next year we think, okay, well, we did it all last year. Shall we continue? Shall we not continue? And then we have different techniques to keep them engaged, whether that's making the workbook slightly different each year, raising the bar, whether that's providing project-based kind of extra levels for those who have achieved really well historically, so that people continue to be engaged in the program, continue to be engaged in the agendas that you want them to be engaged with. And we find year on year that recruitment obviously shifts as well. So in the first year of the program, say you get, I don't know, 25 departments taking part in the program. The second year you might get 35 departments. So it'll grow as recognition of what the program is increases. Did that answer your question, Seb?
He says, okay, yep, thanks.
Cool.
So Peter asks, says, programs need to be appropriate to the workspace and the student cohort. Is there a range of programs rather than a single document?
So yeah, if you go back, let me see if I can do this without breaking the webinar system. So if you go back to this picture here, so this is quite a complex program for this organisation that's been developed specifically for them. In an awful lot of workbooks, you will just have a bronze, silver, and bonus level. So here they've got a colleges tab. Now at the University of Cambridge, they have not just academic departments and professional departments, but students belong to a college as well, which is where they live and get their pastoral care, and quite often their teaching as well. This is very unique. Probably 3 universities in the country have this system. But colleges have very different environments and workspaces to the faculties across the university. So they've developed a specific area, specific list of things that they can be doing, specific area just for the colleges. And then they've got another for laboratories. So if you've got specific workspaces that you know will need different engagement tools, different criteria, then we're really happy to develop those with you, very much so. We try and get the workbook to be as relevant as possible to as many people as possible. But of course, within the university, there's such breadth there that we recognise that in certain cases we have to really make it very specific. And I can see that Melanie's asked whether it's possible to have a closer look at a Green Impact website to see details of the online toolkit. Yeah, I'm more than happy to provide, I'll just have to double check with one of the universities, but I'm more than happy to provide a login so you can go in and have a look around and you can see how it's used and what people are doing. I'm more than happy to do it. It might take me a couple of days, but just because I'd like to get their permission. But yeah, Melanie, I can quite happily do that.
There's also a question from Ruth just above that, and I do apologise for the birds screeching in the background. I can't do anything about that.
No,
the
seagulls are they're about to wake up here where I am, so very soon I will also have birdsong, which is kind of nice. So Ruth asked about the student volunteers, or whether they're paid for the work they do. In the vast majority of cases, they volunteer. We're the National Union of Students. We do most of this for students, and we are very specific about how to run a good volunteering opportunity for students and what that looks like, so that they really are getting skills development, they're really engaged in what they're doing, they feel that they have a voice in the programme. Some institutions have a budget to enable them to be paid, which is fantastic, but that isn't a standard part of the programme in the vast majority, and I would say 98%. They are voluntary, and we've had some probably just shy of 5,000 students now over the last 5 years take part, either as an auditor or as a project assistant. So the numbers are quite high. At the end of the process, they get a reference, they'll get a certificate, they get there's an alumni network that we're setting up this year for the first time, so that people who have been involved in Green Impact can continue to engage with sustainability, with the work that we're doing, and with each other. And they seem to feel quite happy about that. At the award ceremonies, quite often organisations will get them a small gift, but again, that's not in any way compulsory. They're normally volunteers.
I don't think we've got any more questions, unless anybody's typing one out now. There are none sitting there in the question box, so
okay.
Just maybe give it another minute in case anyone's got one they want to type in.
Yeah, of course. I'm just going to whiz straight through, because those are, obviously you already have Rhiannon's details, but these are my details here. So both my email and my Skype there. Oh, what did I do? So if you have any questions or you'd like to discuss how it could work for you at your university or college in a much more specific way, then I'm more than happy to schedule those conversations in to have those discussions, because I think it's really important that people can see how it fits for them, how it works for them. So those are our details. Rhiannon, can you tell people how they can express their interest if they are indeed interested?
Yes, so we have a page on the ACTS website, so that's acts.asn.au, and if you just follow through there's an initiatives tab, and there's a page there on Green Impact, gives you a bit of background into the program. It also has the simple online form that you can fill out to express your interest, and I think it's about 5 questions that just gauges your level of interest in the program, and that comes through to myself and to Charlotte, and then you'll be involved in any of the communications going forward. So otherwise, if not, you can sorry, I was just checking I wasn't unmuted then.
We can hear you.
You can email myself or Charlotte, and I'm happy to send around the link to everybody after this webinar so that you can access that page directly.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, we are at 1 minute and 20 seconds before we're due to finish, which I think is pretty good timing, isn't it? That's not bad at all. But it's been really nice to talk to you all. I'll tell you what, there's not many people that I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning for. So if you have any questions, get in touch, and then we look forward to seeing where the program goes next.
And on behalf of everybody that's online this afternoon, because it is a very nice afternoon for us here, thank you so much for getting up so early. We really do appreciate it.
No problem. It's not a problem at all. Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody.